Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Echo of Life. Let's start. There is a child, perhaps one you know intimately, who wants nothing more than to feel safe, who yearns for a steady, grounding kind of love. Instead, the affection they receive is unpredictable. Sometimes abundant, sometimes distant, always uncertain. So they learn to hold tighter. They cry a little louder. They cling a little longer, terrified of being left alone. As that child grows, the pattern doesn't vanish. It simply takes new shape. The desperate cry for love becomes a restless mind, a heart that's never quite settled, a quiet but constant worry that those you care for might one day walk away. This lies at the heart of what's known as an anxious attachment style, and it is far more common than many realize. Psychologists have long studied how our earliest bonds shape the way we connect as adults. Attachment theory tells us that the relationships we experience in childhood act as blueprints for how we love, trust, and experience intimacy later in life. For those with an anxious attachment style, love has always felt delicate, like a flame that might flicker out at any moment, so you hover near it, afraid to lose its warmth. If you've ever overanalyzed a text message, felt unsettled when someone didn't reply quickly, or worried your partner's love might not be as deep as your own, you've brushed up against the cycle. It is not a weakness or a flaw. It is a learned survival strategy, one that made sense in a child's world where love felt inconsistent. But in adulthood, that same strategy grows exhausting. You are no longer a child waiting for reassurance. Yet your nervous system hasn't forgotten those early lessons. Anxious attachment is not rare. Research suggests that a significant portion of adults experience these tendencies in relationships. Millions carry this invisible weight, torn between a deep desire for closeness and a fear of abandonment. The paradox is painful. On one hand, those with anxious attachment often long for intimacy more intensely than most. They want to merge, to feel secure, to know they are loved without question. Yet that very longing can strain relationships. The fear of being left can turn small silences into signs of rejection, minor disagreements into catastrophes, and brief distance into desertion. To understand this style, it helps to see how it forms. Children are wired to seek safety and comfort from caregivers. When those caregivers respond consistently, a secure foundation develops. But when responses are unpredictable, sometimes warm, sometimes withdrawn, the child learns uncertainty. They learn that love must be earned, fought for, vigilantly protected. The nervous system becomes finely tuned to every shift in mood, every hint of potential disconnection. This hypervigilance once helped the child hold onto love in an uncertain world. In adulthood, it becomes a source of near-constant anxiety. Anxious attachment is not about being dramatic or needy, though that label is often unfairly applied. It is about a body and mind trained, from the earliest moments, to never fully trust that love will stay. Imagine living with a quiet, persistent background hum. What if they leave? It's like a song that never ends, sometimes loud, sometimes soft, shaping every interaction. This doesn't only appear in romantic relationships. It can surface in friendships, at work, even in how you relate to mentors or peers. The anxiously attached person often fears disappointing others,
I'm trying to hold you
avoids
gently.
conflict,
I feel it. Just
and
breathe with me.
overextends themselves to
softer.
keep
We're learning
connections
together.
intact. They may struggle to say no, not because they lack boundaries, but because saying no feels dangerously close to rejection. Every choice tilts subtly toward avoiding abandonment. It's important to remember, an anxious attachment style is not destiny. The brain and nervous system are capable of remarkable change, a quality known as neuroplasticity. With awareness, practice, and healing experiences, someone with anxious tendencies can gradually move toward more secure ways of connecting. The first step is always awareness. Pause and reflect. Do you notice in yourself a constant need for
I am my own
reassurance?
anchor, dropping it
Do you
deep
spiral
into my
when
sea of
someone doesn't
emotions.
reply
The
quickly?
ship rocks, but
Does
it no
your
longer
stomach
drifts.
drop when plans feel uncertain or when someone you love seems distant? If so, that isn't proof that you're broken. It is proof that your attachment system is active, sensitive, and deeply concerned with survival. It is trying, in its own way, to protect you from the pain of loss. And yet, Ironically, the very strategies that once protected you often create the outcomes you fear most. The more you cling, the more others may feel overwhelmed. The more you seek constant validation, the more distant they might become. And so the cycle repeats. Fear leads to clinging, clinging leads to distance, distance intensifies fear. But here's the truth. None of this is your fault. Anxious attachment is not a sign of weakness or failure. It is evidence of your capacity for love, your longing for connection, your sensitivity to human bonds. These are not flaws, they are qualities that, when balanced, become profound strengths. Sensitivity allows for empathy. Longing for closeness allows for deep intimacy. Awareness of subtle emotional shifts can make you attuned, caring, and supportive. The challenge is not to erase these qualities, but to anchor them in security rather than fear. Research shows that attachment patterns can change, especially through relationships that are consistent, safe, and nurturing. When someone with anxious attachment experiences love that doesn't vanish in conflict, that doesn't withdraw in silence, their nervous system gradually learns a new lesson. Love can be stable, can be trusted, can endure. Therapy, supportive friendships, secure romantic partners, all can help. So can the inner work of learning to self-soothe, to regulate emotions, to offer yourself the reassurance you once sought from others. This kind of work can bring lasting change. But before healing begins, there is often something to grieve. For many with anxious attachment, there is an unspoken sadness, a quiet mourning for the childhood moments when love felt uncertain. Acknowledging this is painful, but it can also be freeing. You may need to sit with the reality that your younger self did not always receive the steady comfort they needed. That pain is real, but it is not permanent. And it does not define the love you are worthy of now. The fact that you're engaging with these ideas is itself an act of courage. It means you're willing to look inward, to question patterns that may have silently shaped your life. That willingness is the doorway to change, because awareness is the first crack in the cycle. When you can say, this panic I feel when someone pulls away, this is my anxious attachment speaking, not reality itself. You are already one step closer to freedom. Anxious attachment can be a harsh teacher. It shows you where your deepest wounds lie. It reveals the intensity of your longing for love, safety, and acceptance. And it teaches you, sometimes painfully, that until you learn to soothe those wounds, the world outside may always feel unstable. But once you begin to tend to them, everything can shift. The same sensitivity that once felt like a burden can become one of your greatest gifts. So how do we move from anxious attachment towards something more secure, more grounded? Start by recognizing patterns as they arise. When you feel that wave of panic because someone hasn't replied, pause and remind yourself, this is my attachment system speaking. Silence does not mean rejection. Naming the pattern creates space from it. You are not the panic, you are the awareness observing the panic. That distinction, though subtle, is powerful. Another step is learning self-soothing techniques that help regulate your nervous system. People with anxious attachment often rely on others for reassurance. Healing involves learning to offer that reassurance to yourself. Simple practices like deep, regulated breathing, journaling your emotions, or grounding exercises. Feeling your feet on the floor, noticing sensations in your body, can bring you back to the present. When you reassure yourself, you teach your brain that safety can come from within, not only from outside. Education, too, can be healing. Understanding that your attachment style is rooted in childhood dynamics,
I feel it.
that it was
Just
once
breathe
an
with me.
adaptive
It's softer.
response,
We're
can
learning
dissolve
together.
layers of shame. You realize you're not too much or overly sensitive. You were responding the way any child would in an uncertain environment. That perspective alone can be profoundly liberating. Relationships remain central. Research points to what's called earned security. Even if early experiences left you anxious, new relationships can rewire old patterns. A partner who communicates consistently, a therapist who remains steady, a friend who doesn't withdraw during conflict. These experiences teach your nervous system new truths. Love can stay. Disagreement doesn't mean abandonment.
I am my own anchor,
Space
dropping it
doesn't
deep
always
into my
mean
sea of
rejection.
emotions. The
Each
ship
time you
rocks,
live
but it no
through
longer
these
drifts.
corrective moments, anxious attachment loses a little of its grip. Healing is not linear. Some days you feel calm and trusting. Other days, the old panic returns, convincing you that you'll be left behind. This doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. The nervous system heals gradually through repetition, patience, and compassion. The key is to stay with the process, to resist collapsing back into old stories about being unworthy of love. There's another dimension that often goes unspoken: the relationship you have with yourself. Many anxiously attached people externalize their worth, believing they're lovable only when someone else validates them. The deeper work is to internalize that worth, to affirm, not just intellectually but viscerally, I am worthy of love simply because I exist. This may sound simple, but for someone who's spent years fearing abandonment, it can feel revolutionary. Think of it as reparenting yourself. If your younger self didn't always feel safe, you can now step into the role of the consistent caregiver you once longed for. You can tell yourself the words you needed to hear. I'm here. You are safe. You are enough. At first it may feel awkward, but over time, these messages rewire your inner landscape. They become a new soundtrack, replacing the anxious hum of what if they leave? Remarkably, many people with anxious attachment also possess extraordinary gifts. Their sensitivity makes them deeply empathetic. They notice emotional shifts others miss. They're capable of profound intimacy, of loving with a rare intensity. The work is not to suppress these qualities, but to anchor them in security. Imagine what happens when someone with anxious attachment learns to trust themselves, soothe their own fears, and see their worth clearly. Their sensitivity transforms into wisdom. Their longing for closeness becomes a steady capacity for deep connection. Their fear of abandonment turns into a profound appreciation for presence, for cherishing love without clinging to it. To appreciate this journey, it helps to see it not only as psychology but as philosophy. Anxious attachment reflects one of the deepest human questions. Can I trust that love will remain? At its core, it's a question about existence itself. If we cannot trust love, the world feels chaotic and unsafe. But when we learn to trust, even imperfectly, the texture of life changes. It feels less like a battle to keep love from slipping away, and more like a flow in which love can be given and received freely. This shift ripples far beyond romance. It changes friendships, work dynamics, even how you move through the world. Instead of interpreting silence as rejection, you see it as space. Instead of assuming the worst when someone is distant, you allow them their humanity. Instead of chasing constant reassurance, you build an inner well of calm. A calm others can feel when they're around you. Ironically, that calmness often draws people closer because you're no longer relating from fear, but from authenticity. It's natural to wonder, will this ever fully go away? The truth is, attachment styles are tendencies, not prisons. Anxious attachment may always whisper in the background during moments of stress or conflict, but the volume of that whisper can be turned down, sometimes so low it no longer drives your behavior. You may always notice a flicker of worry when someone you love is silent, but you no longer spiral. You breathe, you wait, you trust. That's the difference between being ruled by anxiety and living with awareness of it. If you've ever blamed yourself for being too much, hear this clearly. There is nothing wrong with longing for closeness. The problem is not your desire for love, but the fear layered on top of it. When that fear loosens, what remains is a heart that simply wants to connect. And that is one of the most human desires there is. So how do you practice this shift in daily life? Start small. When you crave reassurance, pause before reaching out. Ask yourself, what do I most want to hear right now? Then say it to yourself. Write it down. Whisper it aloud. Over time, this teaches your nervous system that you can offer safety to yourself. Another practice is to reflect on past experiences where the worst-case scenario didn't happen. Remind yourself of times when silence didn't mean rejection, when conflict didn't mean abandonment. Let those memories anchor you. It also helps to communicate openly with those you love. Anxious attachment thrives in silence and secrecy. When you can say to a partner or friend, I sometimes worry when I don't hear from you, not because of you, but because of my own patterns. You bring light to the shadows. More often than not, people respond with compassion. Vulnerability, expressed openly, often deepens connection
I am my
rather
own
than
anchor,
threatening it.
dropping it deep
Ultimately,
into my sea of
the
emotions.
path out
The
of
ship
anxious
rocks, but it no
attachment
longer
isn't
drifts.
about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more yourself. Beneath the anxiety and fear, there is a self that is steady, grounded, loving, and whole. That self has always been there, waiting to be uncovered. The work is to peel back the layers of fear, one by one, until that authentic core shines through. And when it does, something beautiful happens. Relationships become less about clinging and more about sharing. Love becomes less about desperation and more about celebration. You stop asking, will they stay? And start living in the truth. Even if they go, I will be okay because I remain. That realization doesn't make you cold or detached. It makes you free. And in that freedom, your capacity to love expands beyond what you might have imagined. So if you recognize yourself in these words, take heart. You are not broken. You are not doomed to cycles of panic and reassurance. You are carrying the imprint of early experiences, and those imprints can change. With awareness, compassion, and practice, you can teach your nervous system new truths. You can transform anxious attachment into secure connection. And in doing so, you don't only heal yourself. You change the way you move through the world. Because the world needs more of what you have to offer. Depth, empathy, sensitivity, and love. But it needs those gifts to be free of fear. When you step into security, your presence itself becomes healing. Not just for you, but for everyone you encounter. And perhaps that's the quiet miracle at the heart of this journey. The very qualities that once made life feel overwhelming. Your longing, your sensitivity, your deep desire for closeness become the qualities that make you radiant. Secure attachment isn't the absence of need. It is the balance of need with trust, of longing with confidence, of connection with freedom. It's the realization that love is not something you must chase or earn. It is something you can give and receive without fear. Let this be your reminder. You are worthy of love. Not because of what you do, not because of how perfectly you perform, not because of how tightly you hold on, but because of who you are. That worth has always been there. And as you heal, as you learn to quiet the anxious voice, that truth becomes clearer every day. One day, you may look back on this journey with gratitude. Gratitude for the child who held on, who found a way to survive even when love felt uncertain. Gratitude for the adult who had the courage to question, to heal, to grow. And gratitude for the self you are becoming now. Steady, grounded, secure, and free to love without fear. Thank you, everyone. Please subscribe my channel. For more update,